Look to any modern society and you'll find people that disagree with it, whether it be because of that society's governance, social norms, or issues about policy. According to Kyle de Guzman of Studio Binder, quote, satire is a genre in which exaggeration, irony, humor, or ridicule are used to criticize and expose flaws in human nature and behavior. The literary uses of satire, irony, humor, and exaggeration are expanded upon in film to include performance, visual/auditory motifs, and editing techniques. These uses of satire can be seen in the two films Jojo Rabbit from 2019 and The Great Dictator from 1940. The Great Dictator, directed by Charlie Chaplin, takes place in the fictional Tomania during World War II, led by Adenoid Hynkel. Chaplin plays two roles, Adenoid Hynkel and an anonymous Jewish barber who, after fighting in World War I and getting hospitalized, becomes mistaken for Hynkel. The ideas in the barber's final speech of equality, kindness, and free speech reflect Chaplin's views, and by extension, contemporary American beliefs. Many Americans during the onset of World War II believed that Germany and Italy were making excessively dangerous strides for power. Accordingly, the auteur style allowed Chaplin to publicly satirize fascist regimes and entertain audiences in spite of a steadily intensifying political situation. In his words, quote, "It would be a sad moment if we couldn't laugh now. I believe there is more promise and sign of victory if we in America can laugh about them. I've always felt that the nation which can laugh is the nearest to being sane." Jojo Rabbit, directed by Taika Waititi, follows Johannes Betzler, aka Jojo, a Hitler youth during World War II, and his imaginary friend based off Adolf Hitler. Its production in 2019 follows what Waititi describes as a lot of far-right nationalism, presumably referring to trends in the 2010s of attacks by neo-Nazis in the US and Canada. By looking retrospectively at the Nazi regime instead of preemptively at fascism as a whole like The Great Dictator did, Jojo Rabbit is able to criticize modern-day ripples of a Nazi regime. Quote, "At the end of the war, there was a very simple law, which was, if you're a Nazi, you go to jail." Even though Waititi is satirizing the Nazi regime, it's for the broader purpose of exposing its ramifications today. Both films in fact use features of satire, caricature, and incongruity to criticize a regime which is full of hate and their power-hungry leaders. Specifically, audiences of The Great Dictator were cognizant of the rising tensions behind the fascists, Italy, and Germany, but they were unaware of the horrors that the German regime would cause. Audiences of Jojo Rabbit contextualize the period, notably the Holocaust, in retrospect, but Waititi's reflections imply his purpose of getting people to think about the ramifications of today's totalitarianism and far-right ideologies. Jojo Rabbit and The Great Dictator ultimately comment on the oppressiveness of far-right ideologies in their own times by using caricature and incongruity. Caricature is a satirical device defined by Merriam-Webster as, quote, exaggeration by means of often ludicrous distortion of parts or characteristics. Both films use a caricature of Adolf Hitler in particular. Starting with The Great Dictator, there is a scene where Adenoid Hynkel, Hitler's caricature, gives a speech to the people of Tomania. The scene opens with Hynkel standing in front of microphones in a large crowd. The shot being behind him shows power and control and establishes the extent of Hynkel's rule. His costume becomes immediately visible, the toothbrush mustache, military uniform, and slick back hair all serving as an allusion to Hitler that Western audiences can easily recognize. Next, Hynkel's dialogue is characterized by Chaplin's use of cod German, including exaggerated German phonetics to the point where he coughs loudly. His violent diction and hand gestures represent the extent of loyalty and manners observed in a setting like this, as well as a caricature of Hitler who was known for his extremely impassioned speeches. The use of a voiceover and lots of audience cheering mirrors newsreels at the time, such as the British Pate, who also used a voiceover and showed vast crowds to portray a total unity in the population. In terms of cinematography, both 1930s newsreels and The Great Dictator used dictatorial close-up shots and vast wide shots with an emphasis on large rows of soldiers to achieve this effect. The voiceover specifically contributes to the satire in The Great Dictator by comedically altering the meaning. As Hynkel furiously yells about Der Juden, the Jews, going into a maniacal rage and performing, quote, strangulation on the microphones, the voiceover simply says, "His Excellency has just referred to the Jewish people." All of these features exemplify caricature because they reduce Hynkel's authority to a comedic exaggeration of his traits. In Jojo Rabbit, we are introduced to the caricature of Adolf Hitler, who is Jojo's imaginary friend. He first walks into the frame and reassures Jojo about his fears of going to the summer camp. The caricature, played by Waititi, is immediately recognizable because of his costume. Next, Waititi uses dialogue between the two characters to satirize Hitler. In history, Hitler was known for being narcissistic and self-centered, and his character saying, "I'll be mad," to Jojo exemplifies this. His desperation for validation is complemented by a power imbalance, showed by the two shots Headroom, where Jojo is short and meek, and Hitler is tall and domineering. Additionally, Hitler's historically unforgiving and controlling nature changes to warmth in this scene as he encourages Jojo by saying,
"Of course you can."
In addition, Hitler's ungrammatical use of the phrase
"bestest, most loyal little nut"
shows his childish facade only confined to Jojo's imagination. Distortion, which is changing traits for comedic effect, is part of Waititi's satire of far-right ideologies that empower people to garner political support. The juxtaposition of Hitler both lauding Jojo and insulting him,
"Sure, you're a little bit scrawny and a bit unpopular,"
anchors Jojo's self-efficacy to the caricature's conditional approval, reflecting the manipulation tactics used in propaganda to garner mass support. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Waititi explains why he uses comedy this way. Quote, "Comedy is a very good tool for combating prejudice, hatred, and intolerance, and we should continue to use it because it takes the power away from the bullies and their messages." Taken together, Waititi's caricature of Hitler allows the audience to clearly see, through humor and shock, how egotistical fascist leaders operate and control populations. Next up, both The Great Dictator and Jojo Rabbit use incongruity to expose the absurdity of fascist leaders by juxtaposing political power with childish, inappropriately playful, or unexpected behavior. Starting with The Great Dictator, Roger Ebert writes in his review, Chaplin creates a Hinkle who is a vain, strutting buffoon, given to egomaniacal rages and ridiculous posturing. The scene where Hinkle plays and dances with an inflatable globe uses physical comedy and visual metaphor. His soft, delicate movements and the prelude Lohengrin by Richard Wagner, an orchestral piece chosen by Chaplin as one of Hitler's favorites, imply a sense of delicacy that is antithetical to the violent dictatorships of the late 1930s. The scene's framing, composed of single shots and two shots, connect Hinkle and the balloon visually. Metaphorically, it satirizes Hitler as a self-centered, childish leader. Chaplin's physical comedy, for example hitting the balloon with his butt, is characteristic of his acting and strengthens the importance of the globe prop, which represents absolute power. Austin Collins from Vanity Fair explains, quote, "You see the globe, the ease with which he lifts it up, manipulates it, makes a game of it, and realize that this is precisely what a dictator wants." Power to fascist leaders gave them pleasure, and the balletic acting in the scene represents that strong desire. The mise-en-scène in the office background, showing the Nami symbol, double crosses, reinforces Hinkle's narcissism through the luxurious palace setting. When the balloon pops, Hinkle's performance shifts and the music changes to low, heavy orchestral notes. His disappointed acting, shown through a defeated expression and movements, creates incongruity as losing the globe, an inflatable toy, causes such distress to Hinkle, a world leader. For Hinkle to pop the balloon due to his own carelessness is a metaphor for the fragility of power, especially under the power-hungry leaders of European fascist nations. Looking at Jojo Rabbit, however, director Waititi uses incongruity all throughout the opening to expose how fascist propaganda affects children by drawing parallels to modern pop culture. After the opening scene, Jojo sprints out of his house and the song Komm gib mir deine Hand, a German translation of the Beatles song I Wanna Hold Your Hand, starts playing. Overlaid on the screen is Nazi propaganda newsreels showing excited crowds and their salutes. Waititi's deliberate choice to use pop music over this exposes the mechanisms that create fascism and specifically the Nazi regime, including belonging and collective identity. According to an interview of Taika Waititi conducted by The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "During research for the script, while watching documentaries on the Hitler Youth, Waititi couldn't help but notice a creepy historical echo. It struck me, the similarities between the crowd at Hitler's rallies and the frenzy at Beatles concerts. In the edit, the use of cuts references pop choreography, making a grim link between mass political fanaticism and modern celebrity worship. Other examples of incongruity include the scene where the Gestapo visits and the repeated greetings of Hitler become excessive, representing the bureaucracy and exaggeration of this phrase that signals loyalty. The increasing tension through constant cuts in this scene is linked to the danger that Jojo and Elsa face during the Gestapo's inspection, showing incongruity by contrasting the officers' excessive courtesy and loyalty to the regime with the high danger that Jojo and Elsa face. In conclusion, The Great Dictator and Jojo Rabbit reduce fascist leaders to childish figures using caricature and incongruity. These films expose how authoritarian power is sustained through leaders' performance, manipulation, and spectacle. By satirizing fascism in two different historical contexts, both films show the power of satire to remove authority from fascist ideologies and push audiences to recognize their danger in both the past and the present.